What's up, New World? And to all my G's, welcome back to Glory to Nerds, where we talk about nerd shit, anime shit, and G shit. I got y'all some real dope shit, some real mystical shit. What I want to talk to you today in this episode of the first iteration of what we're bringing to y'all called the Hittas. Now, the reason why we calling this the Hittas is simply put, these are shows that are hitting and been hitting like recently, currently type shit. Like I'm talking 2010 and beyond, stuff that is keeping the gears running for the culture that we love so much, and they still hitting. So these are my hitters. And with the first introduction, the first inductee into the category of my hitters, we're gonna be talking about one of my favorite shows that I literally just recently watched after seeing it before, and it's Magi or Magi. Some people call it Magi. You feel me? Claps in the chat. Give me some claps. Give me some claps. This show all right, Magi. Let's just break it down. Magi was created by a lady named Shinobu Otaka. Okay. Uh, so the manga got created in June 2009 ish. Um, and then the anime came out roughly around like October 2012, right? Now, it's loosely based on I think it's 1001 Arabian Nights or something like that. And that's just from my knowledge, it's a book of tales and folklore. Some say it might be real or whatever the case, or maybe based on real stuff. But it's a well-known book of literature that has tons of stories in it. Of different times in I'm guessing like Persia and different places around that time. And African stories and all that. And one of the more popular stories is, there's some characters that you automatically hear and you know who you're talking about, right? You know exactly what the theme and the storyline is. So this is where Aladdin comes from. This is where Sinbad comes from. This is where like you might hear the name Alibaba. This is where that name is popular from and all that stuff. But yeah, it's basically the story that sums up all of those things, like the thousand and one Arabian Nights, like all the King of Thieves type of stuff. All that happened within this concealed book, right? It's weird if you think about it. It's like old school Shonen Jump. Like no cap, somebody Shonen Jump that shit for Arabian Nights, and it became fire. These are all legendary stories that you've heard of. You've seen the show. You know the show Aladdin, not that Will Smith adaptation. That should push that over. The original Aladdin, 90s Aladdin. Everybody know that type of shit. All right, so in this style of writing, Shinobu managed to take the idea of those stories, mesh them together in some ways, and add the theme of like mystery and grand fantasy with like genies, which are referred to as jinns, and the power and the awesome wishes that a genie can grant. Everybody had those chances. Not like let's fantasize and think. If a genie came up to you and gave you those three wishes, that'd be like an amazing. Everybody had those one. Everybody has those times in life where it's like, damn, I wish I had a genie that can give me three wishes type shit. You feel me? But in this world that she's created, it's so fantastic. Like the journey and the fantasy realm that you enter when you're watching Magi is incredible. We've seen genies and we've seen the desert and Arabian Nights and we've seen Aladdin and we've seen all these things, but the way she's done it, it's insane. We begin at introductory, and as the show opens up, we're introduced to, I guess you want to say two characters, but it's really mostly the show is more about a kid named Alibaba Solution, and he's a peasant kid, living in the slums, doing what kids do. You feel me? Living, except it is a trialing time. They are in the worst of the worst, it's like the ghetto of the ghettos. So they dirt poor. They got to fight for everything that they have and stuff. But they're still trying to. They're kids, so they're still trying to smile and live and laugh and have fun and play games and such. And this is where we find Alibaba. Unbeknownst to like a lot of people around him, has a certain lineage about himself that he can't even really grasp hold of yet, because being in the slums, it's hard for you to get any opportunity to do anything. Alibaba is a strong-willed person. He's driven, and he's trying to make the best of what he has. So, and then we're introduced to this fella here behind me, or we'll put him right here, Aladdin. And yeah, you hear that name, and you're like, oh shit, yeah, I know that name. Yeah, you do know that name. Aladdin, and you would think. Now it's funny this with the show being Magi or Magi, whoever you want to call it. You Some might assume, like when I first watched, I thought the show was gonna be about Aladdin, but that's not the case. Aladdin is only a part of the story. Even though we've got the Western audience has literally seen more Aladdin than anybody else, and then like literally, and anybody else is more so coverage of Aladdin's story. That's not the biggest part of the Arabian Nights. The Arabian Nights are, like I said, it's a big story. So there's multiple people who are like dire to these stories to come to fruition. So you got Aladdin, and Aladdin happens to be a Magi. Now, in this world of Aladdin that was created, in the world of Magi that was created, there are things called Ruh. And Ruh is basically like, you could technically say it's like creative energy. So it's the essence of life, essentially. And if you're able to harness the essence of life, you can manipulate it into nature and mold it, and you can utilize it for different things, like creating fire, lightning, wind, using it to transform the earth, all types of stuff, right? And a Magi is I want to say a watcher, a generator, and also like a general manifester and controller of the Ruh. That's what their job is. They control the Ruh. They manipulate the Ruh to find out, and first of all, it's used to power them, because in order to use all the strong magic and abilities that they learn how to do, you need Ruh for it. So that's one thing that they have. But and essentially, there's a tale about a guy named King Solomon. And King Solomon is another name that's really popular and really famous and really thrown out there, and especially in the Arabian Nights, it means a lot. But essentially, in the show, King Solomon is the man who basically ruled all, the king of kings, that guy, literally. He created kingdoms. He created the idea for the jinns. He created all types. He created the general theme for the Ruh, and like being able to manipulate it and all that. He's like top dog. So he also created three Magi, and three Magi were supposed to appoint a king to the people of this town, of this world that was created in Magi. And the king is supposed to now become the king of kings. That's their job, is to select somebody who's worthy of that title. Due to unforeseen events in the show, I'm just gonna put this out here now. I do believe that Magi was never finished as a show. I didn't continue reading the manga, but as a show, it was never finished. So the general idea behind that for me saying is that there was a fourth Magi that was created for whatever reason, and that happened to be Aladdin. Like I said, I didn't finish the manga, so I'm not exactly sure if it ever finished, but in the anime I know it didn't finish. But we never really got to find out why or what Aladdin's true purpose was in this whole thing. And I'm so sad. Give me a cry. Give me a tear. I'm so fucking sad that we didn't get to see how this all closed up. But it's still great. From everything that we get to see, it's still such a fantastic watch. So Aladdin, he's a Magi. He ends up literally eating watermelons out of a guy's cart that Alibaba was watching over, and this guy is a dickhead, and Alibaba is like like I said, peasant. So Alibaba trying to make some bread, trying to keep this guy happy so he can keep his life going and doing what he's doing. This guy Aladdin pops in a damn cart and eats Eats all the watermelons that this guy has in this fucking cart, and now this guy's tight, like kicking Alibaba and stomping him down and shit like that. And it's like, what the fuck? And in this general world of Magi, a strange phenomenon started popping up. Labyrinths have been popping up, like literally out the ground. Like it'll be an event, sometimes cause an earthquake, sometimes volcanoes erupting, or whatever the case may be. But at some point in time, these labyrinths just started coming out the ground, right? And many people, just out of sheer curiosity, wanted to explore and see what the fuck was going on with them. So as they did, they understood that going in these labyrinths, good chance you ain't coming back out. It's exactly what it is. It's a labyrinth, but these labyrinths were created by Solomon himself. And in each labyrinth, there are riches, there are magical items, but more importantly, and the most important, there are jinns. Now, similar to like what we seen in Western Aladdin, he traveled through the booby traps and made his way all the way up to where the genie lamp was, and it granted him the wishes. Only difference is the genies in Magi are way stronger than what you're gonna see in Aladdin. The general idea is, with all these labyrinths popping up, everybody's taking their chance to go into these labyrinths and clearing them out. And once you do, you get the jinn that's behind it. But it's not an easy task. Not everyone can do this shit. You got to be strong-willed. You got to be strong enough to take care of this task. And some people go in with armies and nobody comes back. Whole countries are fighting for these labyrinths. And one happens to be in the same exact town where Alibaba is. Now, Alibaba has always had that drive. He said, I'm going to eventually conquer these towers. A tower or anything, whatever I can do, because I want to be king. He wants to be king. Now, everybody's saying a lowly peasant like you can't be king. That's what they're saying. But Alibaba doesn't give a shit. He's making his way. He's strong-willed and he's got it. All right. In addition to the jinns that are there are also magical items, as I said before, and these magical items are known as metal vessels. Now, you can find a weapon that's basically imbued with brew and essentially elemental energy in it. With your own self being strong enough and being willed enough to actually handle the weapon, it could be the different type of weapons, and it's so cool to see what we come across. Now they have this like 8-pointed star on them or whatever the case. That means that it is a metal vessel, and it could do like a multitude of things. Right? It's insane. So there are kingdoms all over trying to fight for these things. Some of these kingdoms involve Syndria. Another one is called Rem, and Ko is another one. I think Magistoth. Can't say that shit. I think that's another one too. That's the magical city, and it's a real cool setting how they have it. So, like I said, the household vessels, the vessels that are in, the metal vessels that are in there, the jinns that are in there, everybody's trying to go. And Alibaba said, "Yes, I'm going to go do that shit. I'm going to go make my way there." So he notices Aladdin, and Aladdin protected him against this guy that's a dickhead. And when he protected him, he noticed that around Aladdin's neck, he had this flute. And this flute here is a vessel. And it has the 8-point star. And once Alibaba sees that, he's like, this guy. If I can get this guy to help me, we can clear this dungeon. And unbeknownst to him, Aladdin needs to go to the dungeon as well, because Aladdin has a friend named Ugo. Now, Aladdin's origins are a mystery. Like I said, even to this point, we still have not solved Aladdin's mysteries. But what we do know is that Aladdin is close friends with the genie himself called Ugo. And for a long point in time, Ugo's body and head are separating. I still don't know why. I literally, he blows the flute and Ugo's body comes out the flute. Just the body. It stops at the head. I still blows my fucking mind on why that happens, but I just don't know how that's. He saves Alibaba, right? They eventually enter the dungeon. They go into the dungeon after saving a slave girl named Morg. Morg is a very interesting person because she is from a unique race of people called the Finalists. That's such an epic name. Let's just say it one more time. The Finalists. The Finalists are just like a more adapted people. They live in a very dark, like what they call like the dark continent or the dark, I forget what it was, the dark lands or something like that. That's where they reside from. And people think that it's a barren land or something like that. And it's not. It's literally like a lush land. But, as them being who they are, they've been, turned into slaves after a while because their whole population has been dwindling down and people are using them as barter and trade to make themselves stronger because especially with these labyrinths going around, people who are stronger bodied are able to last longer, so they want them. So they're being taken, bartered as slaves for whatever reason to, well, we know this. But they say this girl named Morge, she's a finalist, and she feels for it. Nobody's ever given her anything. She's been a slave her whole life. She's never been given anything. So when they saved her, it meant a lot to her, even though she won't say it. She's a brash individual. She's very, very cold up front. Like when you see her, and they're like, "Oh man, this girl doesn't have no personality, but she's a really sweet girl, and she's trying her best. But she's after being a slave, I can see why you don't want to fucking talk with nobody. You feel me? And they go into this labyrinth, right? They take care of business. You feel me? All these traps, the traps are way worse than in the Western Aladdin. I'm talking about like whole rooms on fire. Like I'm talking about bug creatures spawning out of absolutely nowhere, merging together to becoming a queen and like trying to eat you alive. Wicked. There are like regular traps, like how when you walk in the old Indiana Jones shit, when you walk into the room, they got the floor full of like needles and shit like that. All of that. And they get there, and they're as they're traveling through this labyrinth, Alibaba realizes that the king of the town of the kingdom that he's in has managed to find his way into the labyrinth as well, and they used the finalist girl Morge to find him, and he basically used him to get all the way to the end of the labyrinth so the king could get the gem. That's the jinn. He tried to use Alibaba so he could get to the jinn, but Alibaba was way too smart, and Alibaba knew knowledge that the king didn't know, because Alibaba has been raised to be a prince under the guise, as in being a slave, because he does have royal blood in his body. He is actual royal descent, but due to circumstances, he has been kicked out and sent to live with the peasants. He does know royal swordplay. He does know royal techniques and royal etiquette. He actually can read royal like what do you call like old, it's like old text and stuff like that. Because he was taught, and what the king didn't know is that Alibaba knew all this stuff. So in the situation that happens, Alibaba ends up tricking the king into falling into like basically going to his death, so Alibaba can be the person who gets the gem. And this is how the story kicks off. From there, it is just full blown fantasy extravaganza. I mean, it's so cool. Like, yes, there's a flying carpet in that. There's all types of cool shit. Some of the things I want to get into before I get out of here is, so the characters I mentioned, right? There's Alibaba, there's Aladdin, but there's another character named Sinbad, and Sinbad is a fucking dog. I say this a lot. Sinbad is a fucking dog. Like it's crazy how his story unfolds. It's so crazy that in fact Sinbad has a prequel story to the story of Magi. So essentially, when you're watching this show, if you haven't seen it yet and you want to watch it, you should check out Magi, the story of Sinbad. That's the first one you should check out, right? And then you should watch the natural series of Magi, and it will all fit even better as you're watching. It's such a great thing. But essentially, Sinbad created his own country called Sindria, and the reason why he was able to do that is because he started from the ground up, almost similar to Alibaba, and grinded his way up hard to become as strong as he could and to be the best that he could, and managed to flush out and flourish a whole country. Essentially, starting it with just I want to make people live in a safe, happy environment. I want to make a place where people can become free, and that's essentially how it started. And you can watch that before you watch the original Magic series, and it'll fall in so complete because the I believe Sinbad's story started in about like 2018 or finished yeah, it started in 2018. So it started after the two series because Magi is two seasons, and then we get, we never got to finish, but they did the Sinbad story after that. So it was a prelude, but it gave it to us, as I said. But watch it first, watch that first, and then you close into what you need to do. Some people in this, like, first of all, let me tell you about the boxing. All right, they cast spells, elemental skills, extreme magic. It's you can put seals on people. It's so crazy. Like, I like all the names that they have for the moves. They're like enchantments, like spells that you can cast and shit like that. And Aladdin has one, Hafara El Gadi, or something like that. It's so cool. It's like a flame, and he could increase it. And the different spells that you cast can increase your magic and stuff like that. You can merge magic together. If you have a metal vessel weapon that you got from a labyrinth, you can use that like a sword, right? Like a regular weapon, like whatever weapon it is. But then you can imbue it with root, and then that weapon turns into another, like a bigger weapon. It changes how your appearance is. If you're somebody who has like natural fire element, and you change it to your gear, your whole gear changes. Like your body gets like crystallized armor and shit like that, and it's so crazy. It's insane. It's insane. We got people like Hakuryu, and Hakuryu is basically like a lost soul on the verge of good and bad, and he's a staple into, you know, watching how we see Alibaba grow up as a peasant and become something great, and then we see another kid as royalty and turn into something terrible. It's insane. I'm so sad that we didn't get to finish it because we never got to see Hakuryu's, closing statements and how he, resolved himself. But the main villain is a guy named Al Thuman, and we don't. While you're watching the show, you don't know what he's doing, but he's nefarious and up for nothing good. He's a shitbag. You feel me? He's a natural antagonist type of staying in the back, a Orochimaru type kind of sneak guy. Nothing good about this guy. And he's trying to do something with something called the Dark Lord, which you guys will have to see by watching it. I won't explain. You just have to figure it out. And with that being said, like if I actually had to rate this, I'm definitely rating it a 9 out of 10. I love this show. I seriously love this show. It's so good. It's so good. With the Jenny quips and the being able to just like, if you like, a Jenny quip is when you merge yourself with the Jinn, and that's how you get the cool crystallized armor and shit. With that, and just like the storyline and the familiar names and just like the familiar places that you hear about and stuff. Like it's so comforting to see it in a different way. That's like anime Aladdin. Duh. That's duh. It's just duh. We ended there. But it's your boy 2Gs. Thank y'all for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you can. Put your people on. We've been working hard. We got more content for y'all. Great shit coming in the way. And we just rolling. And we appreciate all the love that y'all showing for us. It's your boy 2Gs and I'm out. Later.